Right, hello, good evening. I'm not sure if everyone can see me yet, but I'm here, that's for sure. We'll just wait a few seconds as people start to filter through the doors, so to speak. Now, welcome to Stowe Talks. Tonight's session is creating financial well-being following separation. Okay, I cannot promise you that Jodie and I have all the answers for you tonight, but hopefully you're going to be feeling much better about all things money related by probably about 6:30 if we do our job right tonight. Okay, now if you're a regular visitor, I suppose, to Stowe Talks, you might think that tonight's topic is a departure from the norm. And you're right to a degree. A bit like last week. Do you remember we had Rosie Wilby? Last week, we didn't take a deep dive into a family law issue. And again, this week, we're not taking a deep dive into a family law issue. We are looking at money, how we talk about money, how we approach money, and financial well-being. Now, to be clear, we're not talking about the details of financial settlements upon divorce, but I'm happy to field questions on that sort of thing if needed. That's not a problem. We're talking more about money, we're talking about how money affects your well-being. We're talking about how it can be one of the most frightening aspects of divorce or separation. Crikey, without a divorce or separation, I think it's still quite frightening. We don't talk about money enough. Talking about money's hard. Tonight, we want to try to remind you how we can do our bit to empower ourselves, I suppose, to improve our relationship with money, and to ease financial concerns and worries, really. Now, tonight's guest is Jodie Phelps. Now, you might know her already. She's got a strong following. She's a busy lady. She's a financial planner, and by trade, she helps people organise their money. She helps people have conversations about money. She helps people think about their money. She's on our radar in particular because she's awesome, but also because she's very passionate about educating people about money, and how to manage feelings around money. Okay, she makes something that is very daunting much more accessible to everyone, which I think is a huge talent. Okay, so tonight's session should be practical and it should be empowering. Our goal is to make you feel more in control. I frequently come across people in my role as a divorce lawyer, people who are feeling totally overwhelmed, totally out of control, don't know how to answer what I think is a straightforward question. But it's very easy for me on this side of the desk asking questions about someone's finances. And I think as a divorce lawyer, I forget how daunting it can be to talk about money and answer questions that are fired at you from a professional. Okay. Now, whilst we do obviously relish bringing you the harder aspects, I'm not sure if that's the right phrase, but the grittier aspects of family law, tonight's session, as I said, should bring reassurance and practical tips. Talking of tips, I need to do the housekeeping as usual. Okay, so to be clear, as you know, tonight we're not giving any financial advice. These are tips regarding financial well-being, and Jodie and I are going to answer your questions as best we can as well after Jodie's presentation. Big welcome to new listeners, obviously, and welcome back to old friends. It's likely that you've registered for this webinar because you've got an interest in the subject. You might be someone who's going through divorce or separation at the moment. You might have an interest because a family member is going through a divorce or a separation. You may even be a counsellor. You might be a lawyer looking to broaden your connections. You might be a law student. We welcome you, obviously, whatever capacity you're here in. It's great to have you all on board. Now, we're recording tonight's session, as I think you know already. As usual, we've got the Q&A function for questions. And there's also the chat function enabled, obviously. So if you want to make some comments as we go along, please feel free to do so. But if you can bob the questions in the Q&A function. It is a safe space, as you know, for people to listen and ask questions. You always are, but I do always remind everyone to be respectful on the chat. The beauty of Stowe Talks, as you know, is that we're driven by what you guys want to hear about. You know, who do you want to meet? who in our address books piques your interest. What aspects of family law do you really want to know about? So please let us have your thoughts, and also suggestions about what you'd like to hear about. We can flex and bend to keep everybody happy. So let us know. Right. So tonight's format, as usual, is going to be presentation, then questions. And rather than listen to me rabbit on a bit more tonight, I'm going to introduce Jodie. Are you there, Jodie? Can you see me?
I am, yes. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Sarah. So right, I'll take it away. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me. Oh, I think I need to be made host again, Sally, if that's okay.
Are we nearly there, do you think? I think we ought to have some elevator music, shouldn't we?
Here we go. Okay.
Awesome. That looks like it's working.
Okay, lovely. Just put it to the right slide. How does that look, Sarah? Does that look like it's... Sorry, you're on mute, Sarah. Does that look okay, your end?
Sorry, that's great, Jodie.
Lovely,
Perfect.
thank you. So yes, I'm going to talk to you today about how to improve your financial well-being, during and post-divorce. So first of all, just a little bit about me. So I'm a financial advisor. I was employed for 12 years a big bank, and more recent, the last couple of years, I've gone self-employed. What I love now is that I managed to use my skills and experience to do things I'm passionate about. I myself have gone through divorce, so I understand firsthand how daunting it can be and how everything is just, yeah, it's a lot to handle. So I like to kind of use my experience and my knowledge to help other people going through this journey. And I think, when you go through divorce, your finances blow up, really. You've gone from two incomes to one income. You're suddenly managing your own outgoings. Usually I find in a couple, there's normally one person who takes control of the finances. And if you're the person who doesn't, and then suddenly you're separating, you're suddenly having to manage money, and it can be really, really tough. So yeah, this is where I really like to help, because I've been there myself. So yeah, the other thing I'm passionate about is financial education. We're not taught in schools or college how to manage money, and there's a massive knowledge gap here. People don't really understand what a pension is, or what an ISA is, or the best ways to manage money. So I'm really passionate about kind of helping people improve their financial education. So yeah, what I try to do is, I know the world of finance can be very lots and lots of jargon, so I try to make everything a bit more simple and digestible. But yeah, as Sarah said today, it won't be giving kind of specific financial advice, because everybody is different. So what might be right for one person may not be for somebody else. But I'm going to give you kind of my tips and information which should hopefully help you in some way. Okay, so what is financial well-being? So we hear a lot about well-being and mental well-being, physical well-being. So financial well-being is not really just about how much money you've got. It's not at all about how much money you've got in the bank. Instead, really, it's about your relationship with money. So how do you feel about money? What are your financial habits like, and how content do you feel with your setup? And I guess how in control do you feel about your finances? So yeah, so that's kind of, first of all, what financial well-being is. So one thing kind of to ask yourself, so I'll give you a few kind of seconds to think about this, but how does thinking about finances make you feel? So a lot of emotions that might spring to mind here could be, makes you feel anxious, panicked. Everyone's going to be different, but if you think about money, how does that make you feel? I think something to be aware of is that your conscious thoughts will feed your unconscious, and I think it's really important to try to have a positive mindset. So rather than thinking to yourself, do you know what, I'm really bad with money stresses me out, it makes me feel like this, actually have them positive affirmations. I am in control of my money, I can do this, and I think that will help your mindset. So yeah, I think it's quite an interesting subject, and a lot of money management does come down to the psychology side of things. So yeah, when people are worried about money, it does have a massive impact on your overall mental health. When you're struggling financially, it can cause anxiety, depression, give you sleep problems, impact careers, relationships, and can even prevent us from doing the things we enjoy. And I think everybody, I would say, who's going through a divorce will have these worries. So I think actually taking a minute and making sure you're doing what you can to look after your financial well-being is really important, because what you're going through during a divorce is a lot to take on anyway. So if you kind of get that section of your mind settled, it should help your overall mental health. So a big problem is money seems to be a taboo subject. I think it's more probably even so more of a British thing as well. I think a lot of people don't speak about money. You know, it's rude to ask somebody how much they earn. People feel ashamed if they're having financial difficulty, or embarrassed if they don't know what something means. And I think it's actually really important for us to talk about money more. You know, how sharing top tips, sharing things that we've learned, that will help us overcome this kind of lack of financial education there is. So that's another thing I'm passionate about, is actually making people try to speak about money. And to be honest, when you are worried about your finances, the easiest thing to do is bury your head in the sand, okay? But actually, the worst thing you can do is to bury your head in the sand. I think the first step you should take when you're worried about money is actually, you know, admitting it to yourself, but actually speaking to somebody. And if you're too, you know, nervous to speak to a financial advisor, then even speaking to a friend, or, you know, a family member, but actually sharing that worry, is massive and goes a long way. And I think the more you kind of bury your head in the sand, the bigger this problem grows, which then feeds into your kind of overall mental well-being and can cause these problems we spoke about earlier, you know, the anxiety, and the stress. Okay, just have a sip of water. Thirsty work. So I think it's a really good idea to understand before you kind of start, and I will be sharing some real kind of tips that you can all take on board today. But I think it's really important to understand your relationship with money. So I think it's really good to think about your upbringing. And I'm sure if I ask you this, you're all going to have something that springs to mind. But what is a phrase about money that you heard your parents say? And I'm sure all of you are probably thinking now, oh, that's the one. But often it might be things like money doesn't grow on trees, you know, money won't bring you happiness. But a lot of how we manage our money and our relationship with money has a lot to do with our upbringing and the values, you know, that have been passed down. If you've had parents who've been really worried about money, and you know, that might then give you that anxious feeling when you're thinking about money, or if you've had parents who are really good with money, really good at saving, it's often clients I speak to who have actually got that natural mindset. But I think it's a good place to start, is actually thinking about why, you know, why do I feel that certain way about money? And I think it's really good to then ask yourself, actually, what are your values? Like, what does money mean to you? And how you're acting about money, is that in line with what you actually feel like? I think it's good to also to have a look back at maybe financial mistakes you've made and understand why you may have made them. So yeah, I will go on now to kind of give you a bit more, some more tips. So bear with me. Okay, so I'm going to share some basic steps with you. So things that I think everybody could do with and hopefully take something from. So as I just said, then understand, well, no, actually understand specifically kind of why money is important to you right now. So if you're going through a divorce, it may be actually you want to feel really financially independent. You might want to save for that kind of next house. Understanding your kind of goal is really important. And I think then every time you do go to spend money on something perhaps you shouldn't, and understanding actually, you know, actually I want to save money for a house, and your goal will hopefully help you kind of manage money in a negative, and stop managing money in a negative way. So step two, I think it's always a good idea to set yourself short and long-term goals. So I would say it's a good idea to review your finances at least annually. However, when you are going through a big change like a divorce or a change of job, retirement, then it may be that you need to review them more often. But setting yourself short and long-term goals really helps. I think anything you're kind of measuring usually will improve. So I think if each year you say, do you know what, over the next year I aim to, I don't know, pay off my credit card, or it could be that I want to save £1,000. Over the next 5 years, I really want to, save up for my child to help towards them go to university, for example. But having these kind of short and long-term goals, once you get yourself into a position to as well, you can even have kind of two savings accounts. So one for short-term savings, one for long-term. But I think giving yourself a purpose and having those goals will really help you manage money effectively. Sorry. A top tip that I'll share with anybody, and it's probably the thing that I speak about most, is creating a budget planner. It's really good idea it's actually surprising the amount of people I speak to and they don't know what they've got coming in and they don't know what they've got coming out. And how are you supposed to feel in control and have this great financial well-being if you don't even understand what's going on in your bank account? I will share a budget planner which will be available online, but what I would say to anybody listening is sit down. It's probably not the most exciting task, but it will make you feel better afterwards. But have a look exactly what you've got coming into your account. What have you got going out of your account? And it's a really good exercise as well, actually, to review the bills you pay. And there may be things that you don't even realize you're paying, like subscriptions you've signed up for that you're not even using. So it may end up actually saving you some money. But understanding what you've got coming in and going out is really important. So we've got step 4 here. Sorry, just on the last point as well, sorry. So with the creating a budget planner, one thing I would say is really good is to have a kind of your bills account and then have a separate spending account. So once you do understand what you've got coming in, make sure you have enough in one account to kind of pay for your bills and essential outgoings, and then earmark yourself an amount for spending, which okay, once that money's gone, that's my kind of fun money over. And I think it really helps mentally because actually you're not getting to the end of the month and then suddenly all money comes out for bills and you're thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for X, Y, Z? So having them two separate accounts, one for bills and one for spending, is a really effective way of managing your money. Okay, so step 4. So it's always a priority to pay off debts, especially with high interest rates. So if you've got any credit cards or loans with high interest rates, then it's a really good to kind of prioritize these. Step 5, it's always a good idea where you can to save money. Even if it's a little bit, obviously, again, going back to that budget planner and you're looking at your income and outgoings, how much can you kind of spare to save? Earmark some of it for your fun money, but also a little bit for savings. First of all, this can be towards your short-term and long-term financial goals. Secondly, it creates an emergency fund, especially if you are kind of going from being in a relationship to on your own. Actually, what if the boiler goes, or what if you need to pay for something else in the house? And having that kind of emergency fund there will help you have that security and again make you feel better about your money situation. So step 6, again, this can link in with doing the budget planner. Review your household bills. As we know, a lot of the kind of energy companies and home insurance, they like to put their price up every year. So rather than just letting things roll over, have a good look at what else is out there and make sure you have got the best deal to suit you. Not to say it's always best to go purely off price, because it depends what they're providing, but just having that kind of good review of the bills you're paying is a really good idea. So again, here to review your current financial products. So for example, if you've got savings accounts, what interest rate are you getting? Could you get more elsewhere? Reviewing any kind of retirement arrangements, pensions you have, just making sure they're suitable for you, so any money you are saving is growing in the right way for you. So step 8, bear with me, another water break. So be aware of bad spending habits. So for me, I sometimes will find myself guilty of, if I feel a bit stressed or had a bad day, I will go to my phone and try to buy something. And I think it's to kind of make you feel good sometimes. It might be that you then, you think, oh, I'll order myself a new outfit. That's my kind of go to. But for other people, it may be, do you know what, I might order a takeaway. But it's being aware of what things, choices you may make financially when you are feeling a bit overwhelmed or stressed. And what I personally do is I have a little kind of mental list of other things I can do, which make me feel good. So, for example, have a long bath with a face mask, or go for a walk, FaceTime a close friend. And when I feel myself about to kind of go and buy something I probably shouldn't, I then think, actually, what else can I do in this moment? Um, have a 30-minute exercise, or even if it's just go for a nap or something. But I think being aware of the things that you do, and making a change where you can. It's a good idea to look back over your kind of last few months, your statements, and have a look how you're spending your money. And there may be patterns you realize. You might think, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I spent that much on Uber Eats, for example. So also ensure you're protected. So you might have the best financial plan in place. You may have savings there, pensions, everything all set up. But actually, what if you suddenly can't work due to illness, or you get critically ill? The money you've worked hard to save, you don't really want to have to use to pay your bills, because that's actually earmarked for your future. So actually making sure that you, first of all, if you're employed, understand the benefits that you have from your employer. So you understand, actually, if I can't work, what does that look like? And if you're, is that enough? Especially if you aren't employed, you're self-employed, a business owner, actually, what have I got in place so that if I can't work, there's still money coming in? So yeah, ensuring you're protected is really important. So step 10, educate yourself. Like I said, we don't get taught in schools how to manage money. And there's a lot of information available online. There's lots of books. I can send a couple over recommendations that I found useful myself. But actually take the time. It's really empowering to feel financially savvy, understand what there is out there, and what you can be doing to better your financial position. Step 11, investing in your earning potential. So if you are, you're not getting enough income in and you're worried about money, what is there a course you could do that could, accelerate your career a little bit? What could you be doing to actually, it might be cost money in the short term, but actually give you more reward in the long term. So investing in your own earning potential is really important. And then finally here, I've got, it's really important to regularly review your finances. You could take time putting the best plan in place. You've got your money going into your savings, your spending account. You've reviewed your budget planner. But it is something that you do need to take time out. I'd say at least once a year. Review, how things are going. How's the last year been? Have you given yourself maybe too much spending money, not enough? And what if anything's gone wrong? Why has it gone wrong? What can you be doing better? But yeah, to kind of check in, how are you doing and working towards your goals? And also make sure you do celebrate any successes you have. Recognize your achievements. If you do, if you wanted to save £1,000 and you get there, maybe treat yourself, not too much. But yeah, that will help you kind of stay motivated and keep on track. So I have listed just a few kind of frequently asked questions that I kind of get asked a lot. But I will shortly be going on to like a question session. So just to remind you, so I can't give you financial advice today. Everybody on this call is different, have different needs, different circumstances. So any advice I give to my clients is specific to them, and there aren't any kind of magic rules for everybody really. But I just thought I'd give some kind of information on things that come up frequently for me. So first of all, a lot of you may know this, but what is a pension and how does it work? So you do receive a state pension, so that's kind of government funded, and it's very minimal. But any kind of other pension, really, so you can have different types of pensions, but the main thing is a pension is kind of a long-term savings pot, earmarked for your retirement. There is tax relief on this pot, and the best thing about a pension is obviously the tax relief, but also the kind of compound interest. So anything you save in there is growing for your retirement. How do you reduce the amount of tax that you pay? So again, this is very specific. It will be specific to the individual, but pension contributions can reduce the amount of tax you pay. You have an ISA allowance. Everybody every year can put £20,000 into an ISA every tax year. Once money is in an ISA, there's never any income tax, capital gains tax to pay on this money. So it's a really, savvy way of saving money is to utilize these ISA allowances. I'd also say it's always good to check if any kind of benefits or tax credits or anything you can be entitled to on the government website. Things like tax-free childcare as well. For any business owners, utilising your kind of tax-free allowances is something that's important. And for any high earners, so anyone earning kind of 100 grand plus, there's utilising pensions can be really, really effective, as it means that you can then get back some of your tax-free allowance. But if anyone wants to speak specifically or got any questions, then I will share my details. What's the best way I can save for my children? So I speak to a lot of people who have put money in cash for their children. I'd say anyone who's got the term of kind of 5 years plus, investing can be a good option, because you've got that term that the money can really have an opportunity to grow. As I mentioned, the ISA allowance, children have a junior ISA allowance, and that's £9,000 per year. So per tax year, £9,000 can be put into an ISA for children. Also, you've got the opportunity, it doesn't have to be a lump sum, but regular contributions. So when you are going through your budget planner, if a goal of yours is to save for your children, you can regularly put into a savings account for them. But there are different products available for children as well. So yeah. The last thing, so should I overpay my mortgage? So this again is very specific, and again starts with the budget planner. Can you afford to? And what other goals do you have, priorities? What I would say is when you do come to the end of a fixed term, it's a really good idea to review the term. Could you shorten the term? Can you afford to pay a bit more? Most mortgages you can pay over by up to 10% of the balance. So you do have the option of doing that. But what I would say is you don't want to do that to your detriment, where you then haven't got enough money to kind of live. So again, it's kind of very specific on each person, but hopefully that's helped a little bit there. So we've actually come to the end of the presentation. So thank you for listening, and please, feel free to direct any questions to me. I will I will share some links as well, which should be posted with a budget planner and some other kind of books and things. But Sarah, I'll hand back over to you for the questions and answers.
Right. Well, thanks, Jodie. That was absolutely awesome. Thank you very much. That's great. I've made some notes for myself in my non-professional capacity as well, and a reminder to do a few things. That was really good. Thank you.
Okay.
I hate budgets. I really hate doing budgets. And I see the look of fear across clients' faces when I say, what are your outgoings? Can you do me a budget? They are dreadful, but a necessary evil, and you feel so much better when you've done it. It doesn't matter what the budget says, but the actual process of doing it and completing it is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I have been known to do the odd budget with a couple of glasses of wine, though, I must admit. Do it first draft, have a couple of glasses of wine, go back to it and improve and refine. Sometimes it takes the sting out of it a little bit. Okay. Now, we have a couple of specific questions. Jodie, if you could help, if you can see in the chat. I thought we'd just talk about the ISAs first, if we can. And one interesting question here was can both parents have access to a child's ISA?
Yeah, sorry, I've only just seen the chat facility, so I'm just having a look through it now. So with the children's ISA, it would be set up in one parent's name. So for example, I'm like, as I said, I'm divorced myself. I have two children, so I am the owner of the account that I've set up for my children. So it wouldn't be accessible to another parent. So it would just be in that person's name who set it up. And then once the children become 18, that's when you can then pass it over to them.
Okay, great. I'm not sure you can answer the question about which is the best ISA for children under 16. I think we might be veering into talking about products there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's probably is, but I'm more than happy, my details are there. So if anyone wants any kind of one-to-one chats, I'm more than happy to pick up on another day. But yeah, I can't just generically say that.
Kids savings, there's lots of options, I think, anyway. I think when you're divorcing or separating, the worry is, oh my God, what's the other parent going to do to the account? Or are they really saving what they say they're saving? Do people come to you much with worries about that sort of thing, Jodie?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I just had a bit of interference then.
Just when we're talking about savings for children and things like that, I think one of the biggest worries is a parent worrying that another parent can be underhand, perhaps with a child's savings account. Ultimately, you're only going to know what you've got in that child's account if it's the account that you've only got control over, like you have with yours, for example. Are there any other options for children's savings?
Yeah, and I would say sometimes another concern is actually 18 is actually quite young for children to have the money given to them. So I do have clients who then decide to actually keep their money in their own name until they want to give it to children. But there are so many different options, and it's very specific to the client's circumstances really and what they want and need. So I will always kind of talk about the pros and cons of each of them. But yeah, any money kind of set up by you for your child, it would be safeguarded against the other parent. But again, and not like I reiterate what I say there, if you're worried about the child being entitled to the money at 18, you can, save money in your own name and later on gift it over to the children. So there are different options depending on, what your wants and needs are really.
And of course, that money does have to be disclosed if you are proceeding down the divorce route. Your first stage of the process is working out what's in the matrimonial pot. It's a process of financial disclosure. It's telling each other what you've both got. And even if you're holding money for your offspring, because you've got accounts for kids' savings, for example, you still have to disclose that. Within the documentation we use, it's Form E normally, you can make it clear that is money that's there for that child. Yes, questions can be asked if all of a sudden 50 grand goes from somebody's current account into an account set up for a child. That's always going to raise a few eyebrows, but that's where talking to your lawyer kind of comes in, and you can talk about what you're going to do about that sort of thing. And also provisions on settlement. Quite often people will say, well, I don't want to split this with my other half, but I'd rather it goes into trust for the children and things like that. There are various options, but we bring in obviously third-party professionals to help with that sort of thing. Right, one of my favourite subjects. Questions have just popped up now. What happens if there isn't transparency in the matrimonial pot, i.e. hiding or cashing in assets? I think you need to go and have an appointment with a lawyer. Was probably the first instance. Now, in the divorce law in England and Wales, we have a very simple principle in terms of if you're entering into an agreement to bring your financial relationship to an end, it needs to be on a level playing field. That's where your financial disclosure process comes in. And frequently you're doing financial disclosure on a voluntary basis. And you need to have a look through the financial disclosure given by the other side. If it doesn't add up with what you remember, what you recall, or for example, there are transactions going into other bank accounts that haven't been disclosed, you are able to ask questions. that's one end of the spectrum. Another end of the spectrum is that there are forensic accountants who exist, who work in this sphere, and they help with locating assets, and double checking that things are as they are supposed to be. Yes, I've seen the comments that they can be expensive. It is an additional cost, and at all junctions you do have to sit down and make sure that the questions that you are asking and what you are pursuing is likely to make a material difference to your settlement. So, for example, if we saw in someone's bank statements, this is a very simplistic example, but if we saw in someone's bank statements that they were going out for dinner every Friday night, clearly as part of a couple, you wouldn't be asking where are they going and who are they going with. That doesn't make a difference to the outcome of your financial settlement. But if there is perhaps a significant monthly cash withdrawal, or perhaps there is a transfer going into another account that's a significant amount of money, then yes, you need to be pursuing things if it's likely that there are assets that haven't been accounted for. It's quite an emotive topic, I must admit. Jodie, I'm not sure whether or not you've come across that yourself, with people coming to you saying, you know, the pot isn't as large as I thought it was, or there's been financial misconduct.
Yeah, I think it happens. I think it happens a lot, unfortunately. But yeah, it's not, what I will do is, when I'm helping people going through divorce, is help them kind of to encourage them to be transparent, I guess. But yeah, I guess it's probably more your expertise, Sarah, because I'm not too sure about the legal side of all of that.
It's a really tricky thing to get your head around, because frequently your marriage has broken down and you're sometimes faced with getting yourself up to speed regarding financial matters very quickly. You can feel out of your depth, you can feel overwhelmed, and then there's a lawyer giving you a Form E, which is a big document, saying, can you go away and complete this for me and gather together the supporting documentation? And I think as lawyers, we need to be much more careful as to how we explain what we need from a client, because although it's a day-to-day task for us, it's so out of the blue for some of our clients, and it's terrifying, I think. And sometimes it's very possible, especially with financial matters, as you'll know, you just feel slightly paralyzed, don't you? Or you'll have met people, Jodie, who feel paralyzed by the prospect of collating information, getting bank statements, crikey, going and speaking to a broker and getting mortgage capacity. When you're dealing with perhaps a family breakdown, your kids, you're keeping everything together, a lawyer coming along and asking for financial disclosure is another thing. And it's hard. It really is hard. And I think us as divorce lawyers, as I say, should be more sensitive to it and help people do it as much as we can. It's difficult. Yeah. We have to charge our hourly rates. So sometimes, I encourage people to make sure that they take some of the steps that you've been talking about today, making sure that they do it gently so they are feeling more empowered bit by bit. Don't leave your Form E to the last minute and try and get it to your lawyer the next day. You'll just give yourself a breakdown.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, I think it's not always about them people not intending to be transparent. I think sometimes it's just because they don't understand what they're being asked. And what I find a lot when I've at the initial stages with clients is that kind of financial education piece and them not understanding things. And I think, Sarah, you made a really good point there. It's taking baby steps, because what you're going through is so daunting. So just giving yourself a little task every week, actually, all I'm going to do this week is go through my direct debits. And I think when you think about things in bite size rather than everything you have to do, I think it just really helps with your mindset. I think I remember when I was going through my divorce, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got so many things to worry about. But just giving yourself, one little task each day or each week really helps. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I joke about doing your budget with a fork with a glass of wine, because it is an onerous task. If you break it down into baby steps, then hopefully it becomes easier. And if it's still hard, reach out to your lawyer, or whoever's helping you through the process. I found the form itself is overwhelming. all the information is in there in terms of what you need to provide. But Form E, the form that we use for financial disclosure, is used whether you've got 50 quid or 50 million. It's there to cover all eventualities. And so there's many questions in there that they'll be asking that don't apply to the majority of people out there. And not everybody has a tax liability for certain things. Not everybody has business accounts to provide, etc. So I do think frequently the size of the Form E can be quite daunting. I think there was a question about whether it's a living document. The Form E is more of a snapshot. It takes a snapshot of your respective finances at one moment in time. Your finances are always going to be rolling, aren't they? Because you're always at the beginning of the month or the end of the month. Your mortgage has gone out or your wages have gone in, or this, that, the next thing. So it does change on a day-to-day basis. So the Form E serves as a snapshot. And if your negotiations become protracted, then yes, you will be updating your financial circumstances as you go along. People are supposed to retain capital assets intact throughout the process. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Jolly well should. In nowadays, obviously, there should be a paper trail. We can find things. It's a lot easier, though, to prevent things from going elsewhere than it is to recover them. So if you believe that there has been financial misconduct, then obviously, as I say, reach out to a lawyer. I know I'm saying that very easily. It comes out of my mouth very easily. Go and see a lawyer. And it's not accessible to everybody. But the majority of divorce lawyers out there will do a free appointment to start with. And there's an awful lot of guidance on the internet about how to approach things. And mediators are very helpful in terms of helping you collate your financial disclosure, helping you see what your matrimonial pot is, etc. They're there to facilitate the discussions between you both, so you can hopefully reach an agreement regarding the end of your financial relationship as peacefully and as quickly as possible. But they are also there to make sure that we've got everything in the pot down on paper, essentially make sure nothing is missing. Okay. They can't do a forensic exercise, but they will hold both of you accountable if you're failing to provide documents that they're asking for, which is quite helpful. Okay. I'm chatting quite a lot today. Where are we on the question?
Sarah, did you want me to pick up on a couple of the finance ones that have popped up?
That'd be great.
Yeah. So one of them asked about the ISA allowance, so the £20,000, and do you get that each year? So can it build up? So the answer is yes, it can. So over 5 years, for example, you could end up having £100,000 within an ISA. So that's a nice easy one there. Somebody else asked the difference between critical illness protection and income protection. So I'll give you kind of a high level overview now. So an income protection policy, it is designed to basically pay you an income if you cannot work due to an accident or illness. So it could be any reason that you can't do your job now. So it could be that you've got knocked off your bike and you've got an injury, so you can't work, and it would pay out for a specific amount of time, depending on what you've set up. And we'd normally base that on what your essential outgoings are. So actually, what do you really need every month? And then it would give you, the set amount every month until you're well enough to return to work again. So that's what an income protection policy is. So if you're unwell or if you have an accident and you can't work. A critical illness policy pays out on diagnosis of a specific critical illness. So for example, it would pay a lump sum out, a listed illness such as cancer, heart attack. Every provider will have a different list of these illnesses. So there's two types. So you can get one which would pay off your mortgage. So you might say, do you know what, if I was critically ill, I want my mortgage to be paid off so that I then don't have to worry about, keeping up payments and my home potentially being repossessed. Also, you could get separate critical illness cover, which is more for actually it could cover any unknown expenses caused by the critical illness. So it might be, you want to go private, get private medical care. It might be that you want to do a holiday of a lifetime with your family. It may be that you need house your house kind of to be changed because of the critical illness. So the income protection is designed to give you an income to pay your bills whilst you can't work, and a critical illness policy would pay out a lump sum, which is there. So you can have both. Obviously affordability comes into it, and priority. So if you've got, ideally you would have all the protection in the world, however, it would cost quite a lot of money. So that's when I would speak to clients about actually what's your priority, what's your affordability, and let's get you to a place where you've got some protection, but it's affordable, So hopefully that helps that one. One last question I'll cover, which I read on there, was credit cards, and how do you kind of not get into a bad place with them. The benefits of a credit card are, they can help build your credit rating if they're used in the right way. Also, they have extra protection. So if you buy something, on the internet, and it's not what it says it's going to be, you can claim the money back for your credit card. So they're the kind of main benefits there. Obviously, you can get some with points and things as well. What I would say is purely use them and pay them back in full every month. You've got an option. You can pay the minimum payment or you can repay in full. I wouldn't use it as a lending facility that you're going to build debt on. I would use it for the one-off purchases, which you can then pay back. Because unfortunately, credit has been so widely available that a lot of people end up, buying things because they can, because that credit is there available. And actually, you're going to have to pay it back at some point. And that's when the debt can creep up and creep up. So actually, if you can't afford something, don't do it. And if you do want a credit card, use it for the extra protection, use it for the points or what have you, but make sure you pay it in full every month, and you can set the direct debit up to do that. But yeah, if you are already in the credit card debt, it's actually what rate are you paying, and would it be beneficial to pay it off with a loan, so you've got them monthly payments, you've got an end goal in sight. So these are the kind of things that I would consider as a financial advisor. But again, everybody's different, everyone's in a different situation, so it's quite hard to just give one answer there. Hopefully that's helped.
That was great. Thanks, Jodie. That was
No
brilliant. Right. There was a question I'd spotted. What happens, I've had this recently actually, what happens if you have never dealt with the family finances before? How do you know how to access accounts and bills after separation? Okay. Well, I can imagine it feels pretty daunting if you're in that situation. You can access accounts if they're a joint account. You take your ID to a branch and organise access to your joint bank account. I generally tend people to do that rather than rely on asking the other side for access to, for example, internet banking. You should have your own access. The whole idea about joint accounts is also slightly difficult. Obviously, if you have a joint account, you are able to take the whole balance out yourself, just like the other person could take the whole balance out. And that's frequently where these kind of problems start. Is it best to freeze a joint account? Probably yes, but we've still got to make sure that the family has access to all the money it needs, and that you've both got access to legal fees, etc. So frequently this is where we start to look a bit more in detail as to what the nature of the accounts are and what the family spending is, what needs to be paid, for example. Bills after separation, yes, frequently they'll be in one person's name, and that person might not be the person in the house anymore. That person might not be the person actually paying the bills, and that can cause difficulties, obviously. Some utility companies are more helpful than others when you're in that kind of situation. Ultimately, the majority of people will not want to risk their own credit rating by failing to pay those outgoings. The household outgoings still need to be paid, so mortgages still need to be paid, your bills still need to be paid, to preserve both parties' credit ratings, to enable you to both move on in your separate directions as quickly as possible and unencumbered as possible. If there is a real problem in that bills cannot be paid, then obviously that needs to have a serious look at that. But as I say, if you find yourself in the knowledge that there are joint accounts but you can't access those joint accounts, you contact the branch yourself, you contact the bank directly yourself, or building society with your ID, and they should be able to help you. Jodie, is that roughly right in your understanding of financial institutions?
Yeah, I think I worked in banking, like I said, for a long time. I think banks are set up to help in these situations. I think, like you said, going into a bank with your ID, if you do have those joint accounts that you can't access, is a really good first step. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people, there is the things like financial control, and it can be really hard. It's not as simple for a lot of people, but I think going in to banks and explain the situation, showing your identification, is definitely a good step, and they can help you there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Again, that's daunting, going into a bank and explaining why you don't have to explain why you're asking for access to those accounts, but it's something perhaps you never thought you'd be doing. So I do appreciate that it's not easy.
I think it's important as well to remember, myself as a financial advisor, people in banking, we deal with this kind of thing a lot. We do. So as much as it can feel daunting, but you're not going to be, the first person to go in with that situation. So I think actually it's like when you go to a doctor and you're embarrassed about a medical condition, they see all sorts, and so do we. So I think, you're not alone in what you're going through. Other people have gone through the same thing. And a lot of us, our financial specialists are, we're trained to be dealing with these situations.
Yes, likewise, your divorce lawyer will have heard everything before as well. And we're there to get you what you need as cost effectively and as quickly as possible. One great question here about how do you get your ex to pay bills if they're not in the home? This can be a tricky one, because frequently when a marriage breaks down, you're in two separate households, aren't you? But you previously had one separate household, so you're stretching that initial household to run two households, and it can be really tight. It can get very tricky. Great if there's enough resources and income to kind of keep two households going, but in the majority of circumstances it's not, and it's difficult. And frequently, if your ex has moved out into alternative accommodation, they're going to have their own bills to pay as well. Okay, that's when you need to ensure that you don't let matters drift, because there is a risk that your financial positions could both be getting worse by trying to maintain those two properties. You need a momentum carrying you forward so you can work out what you're going to be doing with the family home. Okay. In many circumstances, a family home gets sold to enable both parties to rehouse elsewhere in suitable properties where they can both have the kids for whatever the time they're both going to have the kids for, etc. But that's why it's important to start looking at things like your earning capacities, your borrowing capacities early on. If we can try to stem the creation of debt, because obviously debt will affect borrowing capacity for you both. It risks you both starting with a poor credit rating, or getting a poor credit rating that maybe you didn't have before because you're trying to manage these two households. Lawyers will obviously give you advice regarding your options in terms of whether or not something called spousal maintenance is appropriate. If you've got kids, then there will be child maintenance appropriate anyway. And like Jodie pointed out earlier on, we need to make sure that you're getting everything that is available to you. So if you've suddenly become a single parent, for example, you may be eligible for some tax credits. It may be that you've got the kids, but your ex is still getting the child benefit. We need to make sure that we've got you as everything that you need to have to start with. Good point here. Someone's mentioned talking to the utility companies and explain the situation and working out payment plan. Yes, communication is key, I'd say. We need to keep the family out of debt wherever we possibly can. What do you think, Jodie?
Yeah, a lot of the utility companies will set up things, and I think the hard thing is like you say, the bills are usually in one person's name, and it's just unfortunate if they're all in your name. But yeah, I think again that utility companies, a lot of them do have the payment plans in place, and I think that, like I mentioned earlier, the worst thing you can do is bury your head in the sand and think the problems are going to go away. So if you are having troubles keeping up payments, speak to the companies and ask for help.
Yes, indeed. And actually, in my experience, the majority of, whilst utility companies might be a little bit behind the times, financial institutions are, one of the things they've been working on in recent years is dealing with victims of abuse, financial abuse. What happens? How can we get victims back on their feet? Frequently, they're going to be penalised when it comes to a traditional mortgage assessment. And there are certain institutions out there that have done really pioneering work with the help of one young banker in particular that we've spoken to before on this webinar, in terms of opening everybody's eyes. There may be absolutely nothing wrong with their financial position, but because they've been connected to and been a victim of financial abuse, the situation's far, far different from what it should have been. That may well be a webinar actually we do again in the future. Might be an idea. What about when money is tight and you have a lawyer to pay to? Is there payment plans there too? In the majority of legal firms, I suspect not. In terms of payment plans, legal aid is quite hard to come by. Some firms may offer payment plans. The key is to get in contact and ask. Don't be afraid to speak to legal firms, speak to lawyers. I know I say this month in, month out, really. You've got to make sure you're happy with the service you're getting. You've got to make sure you're happy with your legal representation. You've got to be happy that you are looked after properly, and do that beauty parade. Go and see the different firms. Really drill down when you get the cost estimates. It's difficult for lawyers to tell you accurately what your costs are going to be right at the beginning of a case, because we don't know how cooperative or uncooperative the other side's going to be. We don't know exactly how much time we're going to need to spend to get you what you need. But having those conversations and communicating with your lawyer, ask the questions, really get them to drill down and explain to you how it works. I think one of the most daunting parts of divorcing or separating can be is involving a stranger in your life. And frequently people don't bank on a divorce lawyer popping up. You certainly haven't budgeted for these sorts of things, and it's really important that you get representation that you are happy with, and it is a real burden. I think you've got to, as lawyers, I think we've got a responsibility to it's quite a difficult thing, but we need to be talking about legal costs first and foremost. There are conversations we have here sometimes where there's far more talking about legal costs than there is the law sometimes. We need to ensure that there's equality of arms and making sure that there is access for people to secure legal advice when they need it. It's a really tricky one, and probably best not to get onto legal aid right now.
Sarah, just add to that as well, just through my own experience, obviously, I think it's really important because obviously solicitors do cost money, and actually to utilise that time just to speak about the things that you really need to ask your solicitor. For example, money, finance questions. Actually, if you've got a financial advisor, I personally provide an hour free consultation. So actually financial advisors will do that, or your bank if you've got a relationship there. So actually save the time that you with your solicitor, which you're paying for the real vital bits that you need advice on, rather than asking them about budgets and things like that. It may be that you can get help elsewhere without paying for it, I guess.
Yes. Do you remember we talked at the beginning of tonight's session about burying your head in the sand? That's fundamentally the worst thing you can do. We need to get out and talk to professionals, whether it's finance professionals or your legal professionals, and we're all there to signpost you and do what we can to help, really. You'll just notice, actually, Sally's just helped and put the name of Rosie Lyons in the chat. I forgot her name for a moment there, who did a previous Stowe Talks with us, and she's the banker, the bright young banker who's done an awful lot with various institutions in England, who's helped them approach financial abuse differently and better. I'm not sure, Jodie, whether or not you've kind of crossed paths with her at some point or have done in the past, but she's a good one to know, actually. Where are we? Oh, great. Thanks, Sally. You just put the YouTube link on there. That's great. Where are we? Wow, 6:29. That flew, guys. That really flew. Is there anything you want to add, Jodie, that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think just be easy on yourselves, I think, and speak to people, don't bury your head in the sand, and take things day by day. But no, thank you for having me on today. It's been,
Welcome.
yeah, it's been nice. Not as scary as I thought it was going to
Oh,
be.
it's you know what, it's really lovely that you could join us. I know you've had a really busy day today, and it's lovely that you can share the knowledge. And I think it's so important that we make people realize that they're not on their own, and that us, as for you, finance professional, for me, legal professional, that we understand what people are going through, and we understand how hard things are that we ask them to do, which may appear simple to us, but we do appreciate that it is really tough. You've got to look after yourself first and foremost. You've got to make sure that you are tip top, as fit and healthy as you can be to go through this. And there are lots of people out there to help, not just obviously lawyers and finance professionals. We now have a real strong presence for divorce coaches and people who are specialists in helping people through these types of processes. Met somebody a while ago who helps clients with ADHD complete their financial disclosure, for example. It's very daunting for all of us, but if you've got an additional challenge, the prospect of doing a Form E for a lawyer is terrifying. So there is a lot of support out there. Where possible, you just need to look for it, but get in touch, ask questions. Right. I think Jodie, you need a rather large glass of wine after your busy day.
Indeed.
And our next Stowe Talks is going to be in November. And I will just see if I can find where I wrote down what the title is going to be. Again, it's a slight change of direction. We're going to be talking about blended families. Okay, we're going to be talking about building happy blended families with Nicole Farrow, and that's the 29th of November, guys. So we might see you. There. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. Big thanks to Jodie for giving up her time tonight, and look forward to seeing you all again in the future. Take care. Look after each other. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.